How's it going, everyone? It's Epoxy, and today I've now released my first 3 episodes in the Mass Effect Andromeda Let's Play, and overall I'm actually enjoying my experience. But that isn't to say I don't have quite a few huge problems with the game, and I want to go ahead and share my first impressions as I now have over 2 hours of playtime and I have a good feel for multiple components of the game that I feel like I need to express in a video just to give you guys a heads up about the game. Now, not everything I have to say about Mass Effect Andromeda is negative, of course, as overall I am enjoying my playtime so far, but there are some issues with the game that I believe do need to be addressed in a future patch, to some extent at least. So we'll go ahead and start with the negatives about the game so we don't end off on a negative note. I don't want you all to finish off this video feeling a little pissed off about the game. So one of the immediate problems in Andromeda is the quite horrendous human faces and facial animations. It's not an experience killer, but it can make you feel quite uncomfortable when someone is giving you the death glare with a terrifying smirk on their already creepy face. This, in conjunction with the absolutely awkward dialogue, completely kills the dialogue cutscenes experience. The length of pauses in a bunch of conversations made me feel overly uncomfortable while watching and listening to them, and having 2 characters in front of each other during a section that is supposed to be spoken, but instead they just stand there in silence very awkwardly.
And that's just a wild guess what we hit. Alec, I need to assess the damage.
It's an experience killer during these sections of the game. Another issue with the dialogue is the number of times it gets cut off, and I don't get to hear the person finish their sentence. I understand having to move the speech on if you're moving ahead a little faster than the game expects you to, but the problem is how abrupt and obvious the cutoff is.
A cloud that makes
It doesn't sound natural when an NPC is in the middle of a word or a sentence, and out of nowhere it cuts off just to start a whole brand new sentence, when it's not a sentence that needs to be immediate, and it just kind of ruins the immersion when out of nowhere it just cuts off the sentence and it starts a new one. I will say this issue doesn't plague all of Andromeda. In fact, there have actually been a number of scenes that managed to move me emotionally and feel like I'm no longer being hit by an awkward death stare, but the issue is very prominent and makes me personally uncomfortable at times. So I thought it was something that I needed to let you all know about. Now, there are also pretty bad technical issues, at least from my experience on PC. There's a very noticeable amount of graphical bugs, from NPCs teleporting to random black artifacts appearing on screen. It's practically impossible to miss any of these as they're right in your face, but I want to try to be somewhat fair as this is a early trial version of the game, so I'm hoping that there's a day 1 patch or something like that. It should honestly be fixed for the Origin access, but I will give it to them that it is an early trial, so hopefully they get it fixed when it actually releases. However, there are also numerous issues with launching the game itself. The issue I had was simply from me having Corsair Utility Engine installed on my PC, and keep in mind that this application is required for me to set hotkeys on my Corsair products, so this is a very huge issue for me and many others. It doesn't just require closing the program, it requires you to fully uninstall the application in order to play the game at all. But that's not the only thing that can cause the black window launch issue. I'll link my fix video in the description for anyone suffering from any technical issues, and hopefully that video will either fix your issue or point you in the right direction, depending on what issue you have. So as of now, those are the only problems I have with the game so far. That could very much change in the future. So what is it that I actually like about the game? Let's go ahead and start with something that I absolutely love about the game, and it's the very fluid movement that Mass Effect Andromeda has. This is something I noticed from the beginning of the game as soon as I was allowed to move around on my feet, as it's the first game that I don't feel like I'm being held down by a 100-pound weight. The movement feels just honestly very natural for being, especially for being a third-person game, and makes you feel like you're actually in control of your character. Something that's very hard to come across for me personally. You may not have the same opinion, but I don't know. I just think that the movement is very fluid in Mass Effect Andromeda, more fluid than any other game I've ever played. And honestly, I have no idea how I'm going to feel going back to the Mass Effect trilogy after having the freedom of movement that I get from Andromeda. I haven't experienced the trilogy myself as of yet, but I can tell just by how the game feels that the addition of the jetpack, or more of a jump pack, I guess, was a move in the right direction for this game. Keep in mind, this is all while having actually pretty good player animations. The game may have some pretty shitty cutscene and facial animations, but I will say the animations during gameplay are pretty damn good. And honestly, Andromeda's animations definitely can't be worse than Fallout 4's. As for the combat, I do think it has to give credit to the smooth movement for being so good. Didn't feel like I was shooting bullet sponges, and that is a very good thing. It's not like The Division on launch. However, I do want to note that does not mean that this game is very easy. It's actually probably more difficult than a lot of the other games I've played. They do a good amount of damage to me, especially with their numbers, and I do a good amount of damage to them. And keep in mind, this is all early on in the game. I've only versed the basic enemies, the dog type enemies, and the heavies. There's probably a lot more. There might be bosses and stuff like that. So it's probably going to get quite a bit harder, and it's already a good difficulty at the point that I am in the game. So I say that's a pretty good thing for this game. Now, the reason why the combat is so good and the reason why this game is a little bit more difficult is because the AI aren't a bunch of idiots, and they will actually do their best on holding their ground and trying to push tactically when you're not looking at them. The AI often caught me off guard when I wasn't paying enough attention to being flanked. It might have also just been because the dog creature's cloak. Either way, the combat in this game is a blast and is definitely one of the game's strong suits. And it also looks like there will be a lot of customization and weapon options later on in the game, something I'm very much looking forward to in Andromeda. Now, before I end this off, I would like to note that even though I'm more than 2 hours in, I have only leveled up once, and I have yet to dive much into the abilities and upgrades that you can go about getting in Mass Effect Andromeda. So if you'd like me to make a video on the different abilities in the game, feel free to let me know down in the comment section below. I think it'd honestly be a learning experience for you and me both, because there's quite a bit of information to take in with the amount of abilities in the game. However, that is it for this video. Hopefully you all were okay with my first impressions on the game and are excited for the future in Mass Effect Let's Play episodes. If you agreed with anything I said in this video or you like my Andromeda content, please consider leaving a like on this video and subscribing and joining in the good fight if you haven't already. It'd be super greatly appreciated as always. But anyways, until next time, this is Apaxi signing off.